But like again, when we first started talking about doing something like this, kind of like what Manny was saying, my whole thing was about sharing resources with the community.
Yeah.
So I worked like for ages at a call center, and like part of my job was linking people to resources, right? And my pet peeve, and I mentioned this last time, was like finding an outdated resource book or finding like an outdated flyer, trying to call somebody and they're no longer there or they've promoted or whatnot. And so like I remember even before joining the department, I was working on a couple of websites to try to remedy that from the outside looking in. But now that I'm here and being to do that internally within Service Area 7, like building the websites, updating the resource directories, and doing this, I think the intention, at least in my head, was again, making resources more accessible to the community in a way that, especially when the pandemic hit, people weren't really coming in. So being able to make that more accessible to them in a way that when they're home, in your car, driving around, you can listen to us talk, whether you like the episode or not, skip, move forward, move back, but accessibility, right?
Absolutely, and just going off on that as well, I think giving the community a platform for them to share resources that they know of. Places like YouTube, Facebook, and now Instagram.
Correct.
Really allow our community to engage not only with us but with each other in like in a safe environment, and they're able to share just different resources.
Absolutely. I think I mean for me that's always been a really huge thing. Like again, not to go back, but since it was part of something I did for so many years, it became like a pet peeve of mine. You know, I'm like, this is horrible. I can't believe there isn't something better. And then the opportunities presented themselves, and then again, great team, great collaboration. You know, everyone here does really stellar work to kind of build this all out, to get this out to the community. And I feel it's been working. Even like, for example, I think a huge example or proof of it was our recent event for the PRC, the open house. I was telling the chief that we had a great number of unique visitors who had never heard of the PRC, literally walked off because they received a flyer from us canvassing. And people literally saying like, hey, you gave me the flyer, or she gave it to me, or so-and-so. That's awesome because we're achieving, I think, the goal, which was to make the community aware that we're here, we're providing services, resources, and that they can reach out if needed. But we're here today to do, what number episode are we on, Matilde?
18?
I don't know.
I believe it is 18. We've lost track.
Is it 18?
I want to say that it's 18.
It's either 17 or 18. We're gonna agree to disagree on this one. But definitely want to welcome everybody to our mysteriously numbered podcast. This is Coffee with a Side of Healing. Thank you all for joining us again. Just so you guys know, we are now, Service Area 7 is now on Instagram and Facebook. I'll look up the handles in a little while. I don't have my glasses on, so I might say something that...
You don't have your glasses.
Anyhow, with that said, we want to welcome our guest as always. Maybe what I'll do is I'll introduce myself, and then we can kind of do popcorn. Everybody can introduce themselves and then kind of get started with the topic. But for those of you who have forgotten for the last 17 or 18 episodes, my name is Jaime Gomez. I am the supervising community health worker here for the Service Area 7 Peer Resource Center, which I'm super proud of. And I'm gonna popcorn it off to, let me see, we're gonna play spin the, no, I'm just kidding. Matilde.
Oh, thank you. I'm Matilde. I'm a community health worker with the Service Area 7 Peer Resource Center. And I'm very excited to be here today. It's a really amazing episode. And I'll go ahead and popcorn it over to Manny.
Thanks, Matilde. Manuel Rosas. I am the Service Area 7 Chief with the Department of Mental Health. Really excited to be here. Also, I think we were talking about this earlier, recording our podcast with our new equipment. So we're slowly but surely upgrading, new equipment on Instagram now. So we're catching up with the rest of the world. So really excited about that. And I will popcorn it over to our special guest, Mr. Javier.
Thank you, Manny. So my name is Javier Serna. I am the Mental Health Clinical Supervisor at American Indian Counseling Center, FSP. I work with an amazing team there. We serve the American Indian Alaskan Native community throughout LA County. We serve all ages, all service areas. So if you ever need anything, our number is 562-402-0677. So did I miss anything, or is that good?
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. I know we're here on a specific topic today to talk about, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I was gonna say, Javier, if you do this, I can put it in front of your finger. Like this.
Oh,
The
okay.
number will pop up.
It'll pop
Or you
up.
can also do like a little.
Yeah, right here.
But definitely, I want to say, not to brag, but Service Area 7, being the trendsetters that we are, we wanted to try to do something different for our June podcast. I think it's June, right? For our June
Oh, we know
podcast.
for sure.
And so we really wanted to highlight a lot of the great work that's being done for men's health, but men's mental health more particularly, given that we're with the Department of Mental Health. And we kind of really wanted to take this opportunity to talk about some of those topics that might be hard for other men to discuss. And being that we have 3 gentlemen and a lady here today, we figured we were kind of going to flip the script a little bit from what we're all used to. I know typically we do have an open discussion and it tends to be a little loose or whatnot, but we figured Matilda could kind of do like an interview and we could try to answer to the best of our ability. I've turned off the polygraph meter, so like don't be afraid. There aren't going to be, right now there's an indicator over here.
All right.
But long story short, we really wanted to highlight what we're doing in terms of supporting men in Service Area 7, supporting men's mental health. I think a lot of you have already heard me mention that we have a men's group that myself and Mr. Manuel Rosas facilitate. Takes place every second and
Second
Second
and
and
fourth
fourth Thursday or
Thursday. Yeah.
Sorry, I
Wow.
forget.
Okay.
This is a hybrid group. And initially, Javier, that group was like me.
The group was Jaime and myself.
Yeah.
Great group.
Yeah, literally. But now we
Yeah.
have steady
It's grown.
participants,
Wow.
and
Okay.
they yesterday we met. It was yesterday.
Mhm.
Yesterday we met for the first time again because we had kind of stopped for all the May preparations and stuff.
Mhm.
And to hear the comments from the participants, they miss the group, they miss doing it. When are we gonna get together again? Just kind of highlights the need for support for men.
Yeah.
Especially Chicano, Latino, Hispanic men,
Mhm.
right? I think we were speaking earlier, and just for me alone, I think part ignorance, part I don't know, just being me, but not realizing how much stigma is perpetuated within the Chicano community when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
And we do it inadvertently.
Mhm.
I think I said something to the effects as that I was brought up to be like, you're a Marine, you don't have feelings.
Mhm.
And, for a long time, for a long period in my life, I embodied that until I was like, no, I do have feelings. I need to
Yeah.
go to the closet and cry. Give me a second.
Yeah.
But I think we really wanted to take this opportunity and this platform to talk about some of those things and highlight that. But like I said, kind of flip the script and give the platform to Matilda to really grill us and ask us those hard to ask
So Matilda is
questions.
going to be the interrogator. I mean, interviewer.
Exactly. And actually, as Jaime was talking, I remembered a couple of points, so hopefully you guys will be able to kind of follow me
Okay.
as we go on this magic carpet ride. So I think, just going over a lot of what you were talking about, Jaime, regarding the Men's Support Network Group, I think that's one of our best performing groups that we have currently at the PRC. And that speaks volumes not only of the work that's being done at the PRC, but really of the need that the community is expressing. And I think with that, I know that we've had, just this year alone, we've had 2 events. In March, we've had a roundtable discussing a lot of things for men's mental health. We've had our April 27th event, barbecue. I don't know if you guys are able to talk a little bit more about that event.
Sure, again, not to brag about Service Area 7, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the first time it happened. We brought 3 service areas together. Ourselves, Service Area 3 and 4, well 2 service areas, including us.
Wow.
And they brought out community members. We literally fed, so we met at Norwalk Park, which was awesome. We kind of did it internally because I'm always like a big tester type person. Let's see how this goes and then we'll move on from there. But it was extremely successful. There was guitars, there was drums.
Drumming. Yeah.
We had no agenda other than just to hang out and provide people with the experience to interact and be outdoors.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, I still am, but there isn't much opportunity. Long story short, being outdoors, connecting with nature goes a long way.
Yeah.
Music goes a long way. And then being able to see people who were used to participating with online in person and meeting them, shaking people's hands, it's so healthy. The participants, the community members, the clients, they're like, when are we doing this again?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think especially coming out of the pandemic and seeing how isolated we all were, it was something that was really needed. But I also think that it was, again, in response to what the community has identified, is being able to address the fact that there's still a large stigma around the fact of, particularly around men, talking about their feelings and support specifically targeting the male population. So I know this came up on a couple of community meetings, and that's where Jaime and I kind of talked, and we're like, well, let's do something. Let's do a support group. Let's see if this is something people want. And like we said, it was Jaime, myself, and just a couple of individuals, and it wasn't a major like advertising effort that we put the word out, but by word of mouth, people just started sharing the information about the group, and it's grown tremendously. Go ahead.
I don't know if you were there for this one, but someone joined us from Sacramento. We had a participant join us from Sacramento, and literally he said, I heard this group was awesome. And when he was done with the group that day, he was like, this is so cool.
Wow.
Like, because I think, and just me personally, we're doing it really different.
Yeah.
The curriculum is, we're here so that we can talk about anything you want to talk about. Of course, we got to be mindful, we're how they say, we got to be mindful and respectful of everybody, confidentiality, all those good things. But really, it's just a safe space for us to share, which is, I think, one of not the founding principles, but guidelines to the groups at the PRC, right? Providing that safe space and environment, but definitely.
And then I think what is very important, actually, I'm going to piggy off for another question after this, the not having the agenda, to not have an agenda for the group, I think was a genius idea, especially for men, because sometimes, we're looking at an agenda and we're thinking, oh my God, when is this going to be over? And instead of enjoying,
Wait.
I think Matilda is referring to my meeting. All right. Message received.
I'm not alluding to anything, no. But what topics do you all think, and I'll address Javier on this one, what topics do you think are often overlooked when we're talking or considering men's mental health?
Well, I feel like there isn't many groups, right? I feel like now that I know that there's, the ones you guys are doing, I feel like I had heard about it and everything, but, I think you always bring up silos, right? And silos are something for me, like, if I kind of barely knew about it, it would be good for like us to kind of expand a little bit more, right? But for me, maybe that was just my thing, right? Where I didn't know about it. But I think just advertising like you all are doing with the Instagram, the Facebook, all this stuff, I think it's going to be something where, you'll get more clients to come in to talk about mental health. And also, for me, I had actually talked to my boss, Dr. Kane, and I had told her, I'm like, look, I want to do a men's group, possibly later, but then my twins came, you know what I mean? My twins came, and then once my twins came, they took up all my time, and which is great. I love my twins. I have a 5-year-old boy too, but I think it's something where expanding that, not only having one group, like having multiple groups, right? Because you mentioned that there's a lot of people within our service area that have a lot of talent, right? And being able to share their own experiences and making, I guess, a men's group a thing, right? Where you can be vulnerable, you can kind of share your own experiences. Because I know when you were being vulnerable, and so was Jaime, for me that allowed me to kind of be like, oh, let me share about my kids, or let me share about my situation. So I feel like maybe just expanding a little bit more, having more groups. But if you guys are doing a great job, cool, keep doing that. But maybe having a little bit more groups would be cool.
And you're welcome to join us. anytime you want, just to come
Yeah.
check it out. I'm
Yeah.
sure your agenda, your schedule is full, everybody is. But definitely feel free to join us. We're open to collaborate,
Yeah.
and do different things. But real quick, just so you know, after this episode, your son's gonna brag about you to his friends, right? He's gonna be like, "You guys know YouTube? That's my dad."
I want to thank you all for that.
It happens.
Yeah.
Ask Manny. It
That
happens.
is true. That is true. My kids they watch the episodes on a regular basis, and so big shout out to Allie and Lennon out there. They just caught onto it, and I showed them. It's like, oh look, this is part of Daddy's work, and now they're avid watchers. They comment as well.
Oh, they put comments on it?
Well, they give me comments. They're like the behind the scenes directors
Right.
on what I should not be doing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
It's funny because my daughter, a lot of the times when I'm editing, she'll be sitting in the garage with me. So she's like, "Dad, play that one, that one." You know which one she likes? The one we did with Dion. So
Oh, yeah.
to sidetrack everybody,
Oh,
but
okay.
she really, I don't know what it is about it, but she really like that one, Dad, that one. I'm like, okay. So shout out to Dion and Sammy. But back to the topic at hand. I think I agree with your comment, Javier. I'll be honest with you. I felt the same way when we first started doing this. Like I said, now that we've been doing the men's group for more often, I've realized that there are other resources, either private groups or things that are happening nationwide, right? But here at least, so I used to work for a provider.
Okay.
I like to say it like prison. I did 20 years at
Oh.
But when I was there, I never realized, number one, and it was part of my ignorance, that there was a need, but that there was resources out there for me.
Yeah.
And now I think, I forgot where, but I've been made aware of another podcast that's out there for men. I've been made aware of different groups that
Yeah.
meet up for men, whether it's in different parts of town, the city, or whatnot. But I think that it's so needed, and like Matilda said, particularly more within our community, within Service Area 7, knowing a little bit of, again, the statistics in terms of the MHSA reports when they used to put out more or less what was the population
Yeah.
and how would I say, what was the focus or the focal points of the populations that were in particular areas, right? Looking at Service Area 7, seeing that it's predominantly Chicano, Hispanic, Latino,
Yeah.
brown people, let's just go there, and seeing, at least from my own upbringing, knowing the need that I had without really kind of understanding it at one point, I feel it's good that we're doing this, but definitely there's more room for more work. So if you have a group,
I think I might. Actually, Dr. King gave me this this toolkit, right, that they're using in New Mexico,
Mhm.
and it's for people of color, right? It's this toolkit kind of focuses on the American Indian community, the Latino community, just African Americans, the people of color, and men, right? And they kind of are trying to talk about healthy masculinity. Sorry, that's a tongue twister. But healthy masculinity, and being able to just go ahead and discuss like the dominant narrative, right, about like what it is to be a man, right?
yeah.
And also the counter narrative, which is like what's not really talked about, that what healthy masculinity is, right? Like where it's okay to be compassionate, it's okay to communicate, it's okay to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what maybe you mentioned earlier, where like you gotta toughen up, you gotta man up, you gotta be strong, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that maybe we can collaborate, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but like you said, it was kind of my ignorance that I didn't know about it, right? But now, I'm kind of maybe check it out and see the ones that you all have done,
I think it's important to have different types of groups
Yeah.
as well,
Mhm.
because it's, my thing that you mentioned, was like not having a specific agenda on what we're going to be talking about. That was very much intentional, because when we were designing the group, we talked about what type of curriculum do we want to use, and then we brought it to the group and said, we can have a formal group with an agenda and speaking topics, or we can have more of an opportunity where it's guided by the group. And the group themselves voted on, no, we want to be able to kind of own our own group and
Nice.
do what we want to talk. And so we're like, we'll still facilitate the group, but the conversation won't be on a specific topic. We'll kind of go open up with it, and it's always we do a check-in, and there's always usually a topic that we segue towards.
Oh, okay.
And it's not guided by us.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
usually what comes up in the conversation.
Absolutely.
But I do think that, I mean, that type of group works for certain populations, but there might be a need for other type of groups that are maybe more guided or more specific, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I
and
think so.
I want to jump in here really quickly because I want to address something that Javier mentioned, the healthy masculinity. It's a Texas, so I made sure to
Mhm.
really enunciate on that one. It reminds me actually of a show called Alpha Males on Netflix. I was actually recommended that show and I watched it with my husband.
Yeah.
And it's about a group of men who are trying to define or redefine the role of the macho, of the man,
Oh, okay.
within their culture. And it's a Spanish show.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's really important that not only do we need to have groups, but even amongst men, creating a bond in which they're able to share certain things and not feel judged.
Yeah.
Where they're able to say, sometimes I say, my husband, I'm complaining about something and he just sits there and I'm like, you could just say that it sucks, because it does. I mean, I don't need to hear anything else. But, just having somebody else listen and be like, well, that's not, very fun or something.
No, I think you remarked on something very particular. So I play music, and I always tell people that are willing to listen, right? The way I behave at work isn't the way I behave at band rehearsal.
Mhm.
The guys at band rehearsal speak very different, and the subject matter is very different. I think there's a space for everything. I think, it's okay to be mindful of what you're saying and whatnot, but I think men should have like certain spaces where they also feel free to really share,
Yeah.
to really express themselves. Again, you and your husband. I myself, I'm probably guilty of doing that with my lady. There's sometimes things that we disagree on, and she says, "What do you think?" And I just go, I say whatever you want, honey. But I think the reality is that realizing what healthy masculinity is, and who men just are sometimes
Yeah.
naturally,
Yeah.
and kind of finding that good in between for that. It doesn't mean that what we're doing is wrong. It just means that this is who they are naturally. I think there's a saying that ¿cómo se dice? Sorry, Spanish. That water always finds its balance. I think we need to let things find their balance, especially particularly with men. We're different than women. I've commented this to the chief, to Matilde ad nauseum, but when my wife first gave birth to our daughter, she now has the status of a superhero. There's nothing she can't do, right? Like, my mind was blown. However, there are also things, so I realized that there are things that she could do that I'm never going to be able to achieve and don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
There are things when she nurtures our daughter. There are things of her communication with the daughter, connection that she has, even with me. But there are also things that men do that are unique to men that should be kind of embraced, right?
Mhm.
We may or may not understand it, but I feel sometimes like we try to understand things too much
Mhm.
instead of just letting them be. And that's where I think my comment about letting water find its own level,
Mhm.
or like I used to like to say, I like to let round pegs find their round holes and square pegs find their square holes instead of trying to force fit them into different situations.
Yeah.
But absolutely.
But I think, some of what you're touching upon also is that there's certain topics that are still taboo to talk about,
Absolutely.
and more so in certain cultures. And I think, to like what you were talking about earlier, I think particularly with men of color, there is this, idea of how we're supposed to behave and what we talk about. And, I grew up around a lot of men who did not talk about their feelings, did not show emotion. I now try and kind of go the complete opposite way. And, I see my kids, I hug them. I try to be more demonstrative with emotion, but it's also nothing against the way, my dad was raised, but my dad was not very much that way. My dad was more of he goes to work, he provides. That is how he's giving to the family, right? He was more of the disciplinarian
Okay.
than anything. But I do think that it's still kind of taboo, and with a lot of the guys that I grew up with, you didn't really talk about your feelings. We almost looked for an excuse of like when we were all sitting together and a certain song would come out, and then all of a sudden we had maybe one too many beers, and it was like, then it was okay to be somewhat emotional, but still you kind of check yourself, you know.
You're going
But-
too far.
But it was never like we sit down and talk about this kind of stuff, and I still think that exists today.
Yeah.
You know, there's certain topics that it's not okay to talk about, it's not okay to show, and I do think that it's important for us to make it a point to talk about it, and making it a point, like even you were talking about there's certain things like your wife does that you don't think you can ever do. Well, there's certain things that dads do that are very much, I mean, they're single dads out there
Yeah.
who are raising entire families, and they're emotional, they're nurturing, they're compassionate, doesn't make them any less of a man because they are, you know. And but I also think it's really important that we talk about that because, you know, we want to progress.
Yeah.
Right? We want to be able, because unfortunately, if now, especially in the field that we're in, what we end up seeing with a lot of men is that those feelings are bottled up.
Yeah.
And that just kind of festers there over time. And we've seen those bad outcomes through our work and what we do. And at least my hope is that in being able to talk about some of this, it gives people an opportunity to, especially for men, because that's what we're talking about here, to kind of release a little bit of that emotion and bottled up and be able to, hey, it's okay to talk about it. And there are certain safe spaces where we can talk about these topics and it's non-judgmental.
Yeah.
And there's supports, because, you know, we're human when we all go through this, through these kind of things.
Absolutely, and just to add to what Manny was saying, it just caused me to think about something. I was gonna say something silly, but the men who
Don't you hate it when I make people think?
the men who participate in our group are all kind of men.
Yeah.
You have young guys, you have older guys.
Hey, be careful what you're doing.
Hey, I joke for another time. You know, I still work on my car. I love computers. There's all types of people who join our group, and I think the idea is just that we're trying to provide the safe space to help men progress, maybe if you want to, because that was something very particular to the event that we had, the barbecue that Matilda mentioned.
Yeah.
There were a group of people who were just on their own, chilling by the tree, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's just providing that safe space to be yourself, whatever yourself is. And when you are ready to join or not, that's totally cool too. And just kind of being realistic about all that.
I think what's important is just being able to give somebody the space to be seen and be heard if they're comfortable with it, right?
Absolutely.
I know bringing up like a little bit of self-disclosure, right? Like, and you mentioned this, Manny. You know, for me in my culture, we like to have carne asadas, right? Like, I like to have a carne asada, hang out with the family, bring some friends over, and you know, there's usually like there's a division, right? What happens is that, like, you know, the men go this way, they're cooking the meat, you know what I mean?
Classic. Classic.
And then like the women in the family go this way and do their thing, right? I'm not there. So you know, we share there like our stresses, our issues, and usually, like you said, there's like a beer involved, so kind of, you know, you're less
Lowers the inhibitions.
Yeah, lowers the inhibitions, right? So you kind of talk about like, hey, you know, I'm kind of stressed out about this, or I'm stressed out about that, and you can communicate, right? But during COVID, that kind of went away, right?
Yeah.
You know, our ability to just hang out and be with people. I know that for me, I hadn't seen some family members for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think giving a men's group, maybe that's the carne asada right there. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the little area where you're able to just share and be vulnerable and discuss certain stresses. Maybe there's a light bill that you can't pay, or maybe there's, you know, certain things that come up, right? So, you know, I just wanted to share that.
No. That's very true. And I think that's the point in being able to see. I mean, we have the benefit of having these digital platforms where we can get information and disseminate more information, but we still need that human connection.
Yeah.
You know, and again, we've all experienced a pandemic that most people have not.
Yeah.
You know, this in lifetimes, right? And it was a game changer. It really changed all of our lives, and now we're having to go back to something that, you know, for some it's new.
Yeah.
Right? And that in itself can be anxiety provoking. And But I also think that, like you were saying, we still need that.
Yeah.
A lot of us still need that connection to be able to talk about our stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick. I apologize. I know that. No, you know, I was commenting to the chief that yesterday I went to go present on behalf of Matile because, long story short, scrambling, right? And it was really interesting, and I found it interesting. At least my reaction to it. These people were meeting in person, full room, big conference room filled with people, like the entire office full. So like I asked the administrator, "Oh, have you guys been meeting in person the entire time?" And she's like, "Yeah." And for me, it was odd, even though I'm not against it, but to what Manny was saying, definitely. You know, the pandemic put that spin on people, and even for me, who I have no problem with it, it was a little odd being in a room full of people, and I'm like, in my head, like, where's the virtual option? No virtual option? Mental note. Right, but definitely it's true, and I think in terms of connecting, it's totally different.
Yeah.
You know, even when you're gonna send an email, right, we're working, you're gonna send an email, like I always tell Matilde or Evelyn, I'm gonna put a smiley face so that they know it doesn't matter, smiley face or not. Sometimes you read an email and it's like, oh my God, me están regañando.
Yeah.
And you know, but definitely that connection is very impactful, and not having that for such a long time can cause other stressors or other problems.
Well,
you know that.
Like Javier was saying, I mean, you know, the carne asada was one thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've met community members who have come up to me, and the support system that they had, whether it was their spouse or their partner or a close friend, they lost them during the
Oh
pandemic.
man, yeah.
You know, and people who were just like, they had their one person, but then that person passed away.
Wow.
And it's just like now coming out of this pandemic and being like, well, you know, who do I talk to? What do I do?
Yeah.
And it's again, it's thrown a wrench into how we live our lives. But I definitely think that, you know, again, it's something, it's that connection. It's just, sometimes it's just simply being able to have that connection.
And going back to having that connection, I know that we've mentioned our March event and our April event, and now we actually have one coming up this weekend, our June 10th event, Men's Health Month. And really, exactly, thank you, Jaime, and really trying to create and supporting to grow that network for men. So we are going to include that flyer in the podcast as well. But I don't know if Manny can talk a little bit more about that event and kind of the resources that are going to be available.
Oh, yeah.
Before you do, I need to say something. Full disclosure: the event is taking place tomorrow. There is no way physically possible I'm gonna have this ready.
Oh, really?
No
Jaime?
pressure. But
Come on, Jaime, you could do it.
It's what? You have an entire day.
when we're done, I'll share something that happened during the last editing session. But go ahead, Manny. The floor is yours. The
No.
floor is all-
Absolutely. Well, this is going to take a while. Maybe Jaime will edit some of the images from tomorrow's event into the podcast
Yes.
of what happened. But no, the idea behind this event really came up from the community themselves. And, you know, I have been going around, again, after the pandemic, things were opening up and meeting with local cities and schools. And a lot of what I heard was that there wasn't enough support out there for men, in particular young men.
Yeah.
And really, you know, there was still the stigma about going into a mental health facility. Young men in like high school age adolescents, that they weren't really able to go seek help because their parents wouldn't take them or they were embarrassed. So we talked about how can we do an event that would bring awareness to regarding men's health issues. And that's where this whole topic came up. We realized, well, June is Men's Health Awareness Month. Mental health is part of health. So we really partnered up with the city of Southgate, with health providers, Vision, I mean, you name it, and we're bringing all sorts of different resources. But we didn't want to make it exclusively just for men. It's for men and their family members, and that could be anyone. To really kind of bring not only education and resources, but have an opportunity to just kind of have fun.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of like where we did this whole barbecue, and there's like carnival style games and entertainment and music, and really being able to give folks an opportunity just to come back together, but also learn that there are resources out there that are specific towards men's issues, but that anybody can really take advantage of these type of resources. So that was kind of the idea behind it. We'll see how it goes tomorrow, and I'm sure, like I said, Jaime will splice some pictures or something into this, but
No pressure.
should be a fun
No
day.
pressure whatsoever. Well, I'm glad Matilde will be there supporting me in one capacity with the editing and stuff. But definitely, Manny said it, I think, during our SALT meeting. So for those of you who don't know, we just had our Service Area 7 leadership team meeting, which is a SALT meeting. Happens every second Friday of the month. You should have showed up. If you didn't, now you know. But all jokes aside, I think Manny said it. Although the focus is for men, it's for anybody. We all know someone. We all have a father, a parent. There's a man in everyone's life in one way or another that could either benefit, or you as a family member come and learn about the resources and definitely educate yourself to help educate that person in your life. But all are welcome.
Yeah.
All are welcome.
And actually with that, so I went canvassing to Southgate Park this week to promote the event, and that's where I made a connection with the provider that Jaime presented to this week. Thank you, by the way. And actually, there were a lot of families there. And one of the questions that I was asked was, how can a spouse or like a partner support or help support a man in trying to find, services like a group or even therapy? My response was, come to the event and you'll find out. But since I have the subject matter experts here, I want to pick your brains on that and see.
That's a tough one. I don't want to get in trouble. So you know what? I'll say it the way it sounds in my cabeza. I'm very stubborn. There's a lot of things that my lady talked to me about that I just wouldn't listen to before. And not until my daughter came, it inspired like this change for me, right?
Yeah.
I think we were talking about earlier when you have a child that changes stuff for you. But I remember there was a lot of things that she would constantly tell me, whatever the subject matter was, like, we should do this or you should try to do that.
Yeah.
And not until my daughter came was it like all eye-opening. So in terms of that question, I don't know if there is, at least for me. I don't know, because I was really stubborn, really stubborn, and it would be her and my sister, then my mom would be like, oh, here we go again.
No, it's tough. It's a real tough thing. I think you're right. Like once, I think as a man, you have certain views, right? And those views, it's kind of hard to change them sometimes, right? So I'll use my dad as an example, right? And I could use myself, but I don't want to burn. I'll use my dad. But my dad is, he's from Michoacan, Mexico. He's like, he's a gardener. I used to help him gardening and stuff. And he's very I want to say machismo, right? I'll use that word. But as he's grown older, right? For me, I experienced my dad as a man differently than my children have experienced it, right?
Yeah.
So now my dad is more open to different things, right? And my dad, what I say is that my children are getting the best of my dad.
Yeah.
He says I love you to them. I never got that. He'll be like, oh, let's go to the park. Let's go get him an ice cream. I'm like, what was that for me?
Yeah.
But I love my dad. He did so much for me. He taught me how to work. He told me the value of work ethic. Like on the summers we go gardening and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think maybe just sharing the information, maybe life changes. I think everybody's different, right? And I think for my dad, I feel like if I went up to him and I noticed something and I said, hey, Pops, can you do this or can you look into this? He might be more open now compared to when I was a kid, right? And but yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I don't know if it's only for men or for everybody, but I know men have certain views, and culture has a lot to do with it
Yeah.
too. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you think, man.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, I'm experiencing the same thing with my dad, and my brother and I have talked about the fact of we joke around. It was like, hey, do you remember when was the last time Dad put his arm around us? Yeah, when he was moving us out of the way. But now it's like he's got the grandkids, he picks them up, he's playing, and it's just like it's the, I guess, evolution,
Yeah.
right, of going from a father to a grandfather and how that changes. But back to your question, I agree. I think it's different for every male and every relationship. I think, in my perspective, or at least from what I've seen and experienced myself, is one thing that's common is just the ability sometimes just to listen. Sometimes, I mean, we as men, I know that it's stereotypical, is like we don't talk about our feelings too much, but there are certain times that maybe when we do, sometimes it's just an opportunity to just hear them out. And that may sometimes go a long way, because oftentimes we don't speak about our feelings, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. Or as I hear a lot is like, so what are you thinking? Nothing. Right? That's our typical response, right? But then those moments that we like, what are you thinking about? And we do talk about it. It's like, for whatever reason, that topic may be of importance to the man in your life. And sometimes it's just about listening, and that goes a long way, because more often than not, again, from what we're seeing a lot is that men oftentimes don't have that listening ear, somebody to talk to about their feelings. So, but as far as like even talking about like mental health and that kind of stuff, yeah, that's tough, because like I said, there's still some taboo in talking about that. Sometimes it's more, I think in general, and this doesn't just apply to men, but I think oftentimes when we talk about mental health, we tend to talk about the mental illness, the bad part of it. And rather than emphasizing of healthy practices to maintain our mental health, to maintain our well-being. And I think that's a different approach, and just really taking a different stance on how we view mental health in general. It goes a long way, because rather than focusing on the negative aspects of mental illness, it's really trying to look at what those positives are and what the strengths are. And there's a lot of strength in that. At least I believe that there is. So.
Yeah.
And I actually want to share a story. I just want to tell my dad that I mentioned this on the podcast.
So tell your dad, turn
yeah.
Block his YouTube.
Everybody's bringing up their dad. I'm like, hey, let me tell you about my dad.
So my dad just turned 67 this year.
Oh wow,
Right.
And he retired 3 years ago when the pandemic first started. I was pregnant at the time, and I remember for the longest time he wanted to retire. He said, I'm ready. But he never wanted to. I think the pandemic kind of pushed him to do so. And after my son was born, I think being inside the house and having all of these changes all at the same time, not being his little girl anymore, but a little girl plus a baby, and him being retired, he wasn't very well. Like, I saw him sometimes in his room breaking down. I saw him not acting the way that he used to before. And I was always saying, if you don't like things, you have the power to change them. You can go to therapy, you can do all these different things. Of course, he never listened to what I had to say. But I was always there. And there came a point where he even asked me, I remember you mentioning something about therapy. How can I get help?
Wow.
And I said, yes, of course, I can connect you. And I think those moments, just being, like Manny said, a listening ear, and just being there for not only our partners, but for a friend that may not have an additional support system is so important.
Yeah.
I think that's so true. I'm just listening to you, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Something I was thinking too that's very impactful to men. By the way, my family's from Michoacan too. So
Oh, okay.
just so you know.
That's why we get along.
Yeah,
right?
just so you know. But as a man, again, when we had our daughter, being a provider, it changes completely. You're like now responsible for another individual. When it was just me and my lady, we didn't do too many extravagant things, but we were kind of traveling here and there, doing all these things. And now that when we had the baby, and then it was kind of during the pandemic, it changed everything. Priorities changed. The stress for any man, but I think particularly brown men, being a provider, it's like an ego thing too, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say, I know I'm touching on a lot of little things, but like being a provider as a Chicano man is like a big stressor, part of mental health. And like taking that away, like how you were mentioning your dad retiring,
Yeah.
that takes a lot from somebody, you know? Figuring out like if you don't have those healthy coping skills or outlets, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like I know I'm supporting my family in a different way, but I was used to working hard every day. I woke up at 5, got home at 5, right? And now you change that. It changes their dynamic completely and kind of throws them for a loop, or throws the individual for a loop. And like so, you know, I have older friends who have also left the workforce, and you can definitely see that change in people when you do that, because you become accustomed to like you're a provider, you know. Even if you have a partner that supports you, you have this whole soldier mentality, like I gotta do it all. But then when that changes, I can definitely see how that would affect somebody tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that you shared that. I feel like that's a powerful story because I think it speaks volumes of the fact of, you know, somebody, in this case your dad, going through struggles like many of us have and are going through.
Yeah.
But just having somebody like, look, you can give the advice, but maybe he wasn't in the place to take it at that point. And you were patient, you waited, you gave him his space, and then he finally came to you. In that moment, for whatever reason, he came to you and reached out, but being able to then at that point be like, okay, instead of like, I told you so, it's more of a like, yeah, absolutely, what can I do? You know, and that's huge. I would like to say that I think we all have that, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
Not everyone does, you know, and it is, you know, to your point, Jaime, also of like a sense of loss of identity. You know, I had friends who retired before the pandemic who, when they retired, were like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah.
My identity is whatever my job was. That's what people knew me as.
Yeah.
But I see now, I have close friends who have since retired, and now they're thriving. It's just like, that was who I was. I'm done with that. This is like, now I'm really living my life. But I think it goes to speak also, I think, the type of support system that you have.
Yeah.
You know, is, yeah, my identity was my job, but now that I've lost my job, I've lost my identity. Whereas some folks, like what we're talking about with their dads, they may retire, but it's like, that's not me anymore. Now I'm grandpa. I'm abuelo. That's who I am, and that's my new identity, and they embrace it.
Yeah.
You know, and they thrive because of it. So, yeah, I think we all go through it very, very differently.
Absolutely, and kind of as we take that all into consideration and we start kind of wrapping it up, what would be some advice that you would give to men out there who are reluctant to kind of talk or seek any mental health services?
Well, I think you know, that toolkit that I was talking about earlier about healthy masculinity. Sorry about that. They talk about there's this story about you know, this man who's talking to his dad, right? And he's like, tell me about my grandfather. And he's like, oh, your grandfather was. He was like, everybody loved him. He was like a giant, but he wasn't that big. You know what I mean? But everybody loved him, and he's like, and he was a great man. And, you know, he would tell me stories about, you know, making sure, like he gave a story about, hey dad, is it true that men don't cry? He's like, that's not true, son. You wanna know why? He's like, you have to release the poison that goes in your body. That's the way you release the poison, right? And he also gave another example where he just basically gave him advice and giving him basically life stories about, you know, how to be a man, and sometimes some people don't have that, right? And one of the things that you could get from maybe this men's health group is getting other people's stories, right? Talking about your lives. And so maybe that's what I would suggest, right? And I know that in the American Indian culture, talking circles are a big thing, right? So this is one way, maybe this could be like a talking circle for people.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, it maybe, I always equate seeking mental health services, it's like when you go looking to buy a new pair of jeans. You just don't go to the store, pick up the first pair, and walk out with them. You're right. You look at the size, the style, the color. You try them on. You don't like this. There's all sorts of different things. Well, it's no different in seeking support. It's not one size fits all. It's really looking to see what fits you, and sometimes individual therapy is not for you, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's listening in on a group like our men's support group, not even to speak up. Sometimes it's just sitting there and taking it all in, just listening. And if that's what at that point is what you're ready for, then again, that's awesome. And if you're not ready for services, that's okay too. But at the point that you feel that you are, then know that there are services out there for you. And again, that's why I said also like the story you shared, Matilda, that's huge, because I do think that's what it is. We always talk about in mental health, right? You start where the client's at. Well, we literally do have to do that. We start where the client's at. Some clients aren't ready for services. That's okay. But as long as they know, like you did with your dad, you may not be ready, but I'm here whenever you are. That in itself goes a long way.
I think so. I agree with both of you. I'm gonna quote Manny from yesterday. Manny said yesterday.
Uh-oh.
No.
What do you say? Tell me.
Yeah, I know.
Very simple.
Before you say it, I'm gonna have to make sure that we're not gonna edit this out. Yeah, exactly.
You said it doesn't have to be one day at a time. It could be 1 minute at a time or 1 second at a time, because everybody adjusts differently. I was thinking of saying just to be open to growth, but even that, just trying to be open in general. At least for me, I know that it was 1 day at a time, 1 second at a time. Still struggle sometimes, but I think we all still do. And I think that just being open to like, hey, sometimes it's 1 second at a time, 1 minute at a time, and if you have to ramp it up to like a day at a time, that's good. That's progress, right? So definitely not really advice, but just like little helpful hints that they might be able to help somebody who's open to start that process, right? Who's really open to kind of start that process and that self-work that it takes to get to a good, healthy space.
Absolutely, and I think that's very powerful. 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time. I think that can apply to a lot of us at different points in our lives.
He just submitted a patent for that. So I think it's 25 cents every time you say that.
Oh, there you go. You owe some money.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to add too is, that I know it's Men's Mental Health Month, but also women do a lot for us, right? And I do want to highlight that the women in my life, my wife, Elaine, I want to say hi, and my mom, they've been like rocks, right? And they've been able to kind of really support me when there's tough times, right? Because we all go through mental health issues. I'm a clinician, but there's times where I don't feel good, you know what I mean? And it happens, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of highlight that and just shout them out, right? Because I think it's a big thing. And one of the biggest things too is we got to understand that life is, there's going to be pain and suffering, right?
Yeah.
That's what life is about sometimes, but there's also happiness and joy, right?
Yeah.
And we got to be able to kind of know, like, hey, when there is pain and suffering, it's okay. We're gonna get through it, right? So, and I bring that up because there's, preparing for this, right? I didn't even look at my notes, right?
Yeah,
But
notes.
I had notes. I didn't even look at them. But men have 4 times the suicide rate of women.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things that when I looked at those notes, I was like, wow, I didn't really think about that, right? And
That's
and I think you mentioned this, Manny, where like, there's times where, as men, we bottle things up. And let's not try to bottle it up to the point where we get to that point.
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely.
And I think that's why we're trying to do the work that we do. Again, I know that at least there are other men's groups out there and men's support, but at least within our service area, again, kind of not redirecting, but really focusing on this, like really making a subject matter that we want to address, either if it's with a group, with a new talking circle, with things like that, even for younger men. I was so impressed a while back ago, we went out to a school, and to see the amount of like teenagers, high school students who were like reaching out for help, it was tremendous. But yeah, definitely, I agree with what you were saying. And I'll be honest with you, I feel the same way about my partner, about my lady. I'm not going to say her name because she's going to hit me. But I'm just joking. The point is that I've said this to my lady in the past, it comes out better in Spanish, but ¿cómo me ha aguantado tanto tiempo?
Alright, yeah.
You know what I
okay.
mean? Because I was a knucklehead, like I shared earlier. I wouldn't listen. Very
You
still.
were?
Hey, what happened?
Hey, I'm the new and improved Jaime. But definitely, I agree with you, Javier. I think that it takes a strong partner to
Yeah.
be able to support us. You know, men are different, and kudos to them. You know, kudos to them and everything they do.
Yeah.
You know, being moms is no joke, and then being a wife or partner is even. Matilda, you could speak to that.
Hey, this is not about you. But I actually have one comment and then one very serious question to ask.
Uh-oh, I'm getting serious.
So November is coming up. Do I have a pledge from the three of you to not shave for the month of November?
Whoa.
Oh, you
That
mean
is-
Movember?
November.
Movember? Yeah.
Well,
Right here, right now, you guys.
you know,
Well, that means he's gonna have to shave his beard
I
and just
know.
grow it, just have the mustache.
I could, you know, I talked to my daughter about it, you know, and so I've showed her pictures of me because I used to be clean shaven, no mustache, no beard, no nothing, and I've showed her pictures and she's okay with it. And I'll be honest with you, the one who shakes her head is my lady. She's like, mm-mm.
Oh, she's
she's
like
gotten
you?
used to like not shaving
Oh, okay.
because she's gotten used to me, you
And the
know,
beard.
Oh,
working
okay.
out and stuff. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe I can superimpose like a clean shave.
We'll get you one of those Velcro ones that curls up, like the Yosemite Sam kind of like.
Oh wait,
Big
is the
fat.
idea to grow out a mustache?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
no problem. Sorry. I thought you were asking me to
That's
shave.
not a big deal.
That's
I
no
won't shave until November,
problem.
right?
No problem.
That's how committed you
I
are.
was so confused. I'm like, sorry. What am I talking about here?
But with that, I actually want to wish all the men in this room and all the men watching, of course, a happy Father's Day. Hopefully the video will be edited by then.
It's gonna be done by today.
Oh,
yeah.
a slight jab, a slight jab right
Thank
there.
you, yeah. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today and our community members as well. Just a reminder, this is going to be posted on Facebook, YouTube, and now our Instagram. Our handle on Instagram is at LACDMHSA7. And I know that our producer here will be able to edit that into the video as well.
Yeah, definitely. And again, thank you, Javier, for joining us. Mr. Rosas, Mr. Manuel
My
Rosas.
dad here?
Archie. Thank you to all the dads, all the men out there. Feel free to join our groups and follow us on social media. I know it's a little weird for guys, but trust me, it works. I not only am I a member, but I'm also the owner. But no, long story short, thank you all for joining the group. Thank you all for continuing to visit YouTube, checking out the podcast, continuing to visit our website, and support all the great work that we do throughout Service Area 7. Javier, Mr. Rosas, Señorita González, Matilde, Doctora. Thank you all for being here. Wait, you should be doing the last comments because
I was trying to do the last comments here and then somebody
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think it's fine if
You hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I'm teasing.
No.
Go ahead, I'm teasing.
But with that, thank you, Mr. Rosas, Manuel Rosas. Javier
Get him with
for
the
joining
Mr.
us.
All right,
I know,
Mr.,
I
right?
know. And Mr. Gomez for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to this event and many more successes from not only the Men's Support Network group, but then also all the great groups that Javier is going to accomplish with AICC.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Rosas.
Otra.
Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, Matilde, for inviting me. It was great. I loved it. You know,
Yeah, awesome.
it was a cool experience and something new for us to do
Yeah.
within the department. You guys are innovative. You know, I gotta say that. Thank you for allowing
We
me.
are innovative.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Thank you. So yeah,
Thank you.
And thank you both for sharing your stories as well, and Matilde for having such a welcoming disposition that you got the conversation going. So really appreciate it.